Welcome back to Men and Motors, and today you join me with the all-new Honda Civic Type R. But if that's a little bit too spicy for you, you can always click up here to see Jim's review of the hybrid model. But first things first, let us know in the comments of your thoughts on the looks of this vehicle, because I think it's a very aggressive looking thing and it absolutely stinks of hot hatch. You've got a lovely low ride height with this massive split around the front. An actual real bonnet scoop. It does actually go through into the bonnet and serves a purpose, and it just looks very JDM. You've got real wing vents here that actually go all the way through. You can poke your finger through, as you can see there. You've got these lovely black gloss side skirts, and as you follow the lines towards the back, you're greeted by this absolutely massive GT style drift wing. I think it does look like it's out of Grand Theft Auto, but it does pull it off really well. It's a sturdy looking thing, and I'm told it's for added downforce, which I don't really see the point in because this car is front wheel drive. However, even though this does look aftermarket and look great, Honda have actually listened to the owners of the previous model, because although the FK8 spoiler looked 10 times better in my opinion, it was the worst thing ever for visibility out of the back window. The technology and the design in this spoiler is so great, it still gives it that tall feel at the back of the car, but it does not impact the rear view in the mirror a single bit. Whilst we're taking a look at the back of the car, we should talk about these exhausts. Credit to Honda because they are still real exhausts. I absolutely hate those fascia exhausts, especially now car manufacturers have started putting the shape of an exhaust with just a black hole and you can't put your fist through them. But these are massive, and they do slightly differ to the previous model where you've got one big one in the middle and two smaller ones on the outside. On the FK8 it was two big ones and one small one in the centre. 3 exhausts, what do we think of that? Personally, I think it's a little bit childish, but then again, Honda Civics have always been in your face, especially when they come on cam and the revs pick up, so I do understand why they've done that. The diffuser, I've got to thank Honda for actually doing that in gloss black and not doing it in that horrible, dull plastic trim colour. It really does pull it off well, and the back of this car does look wide and aggressive because it is slightly wider than the standard model which Jim reviewed earlier on the channel. It comes with these 19-inch 10-spoke matte black alloy wheels, which do appear to look bigger than what they actually are in size, and I think that's down to the design of the spokes flicking all the way out to the tyre's edge. You also get massive Brembo disc brakes and calipers, and the red, of course, just finishes it off and gives it that added Type R look. You can tell Honda have gone no expense spared with the look of this car. It just absolutely looks fantastic. I think it looks 10 times better than the FK8 model, and it does look a little more grown up. It does come with a very, very worrying price tag though. This model is 300 quid shy of 50 grand. At a first look, I think that is absolutely ludicrous, but as this video goes on, hopefully we'll start to see why this car is £50,000. Most Civic owners I know spend about 3-4 grand on a second-hand Type R, and they'll kick its head in, take it to the odd track day and then move on from it. So to part with £50,000 with a car like this does seem a little crazy, but I'm pretty sure it's got its worth, and we'll see more of that when we get it out on the road test. Now, let's get the boring grandad statistic out of the way. How big is the boot? Well, it's actually quite large. It's 410 litres, which can expand to 1,212 litres if you flop the seats forward. You also get this very, very strange and peculiar parcel shelf which comes across. But the real test of this is, does the boot take a Tom Shorrock? Well, let's try it. So if I just easily get in, then quite easily this car takes a full Tom Shorrock, so it gets the boot size of the year award like many other cars have on the reviews of this channel. So let's talk about the performance. What powers it, what size engine has it got, and what does it actually look like underneath the engine bay? Well, if I just pop the bonnet and lift it up, you are greeted by something which I think is rather pretty. It does look amazing, it looks very nice, and you've got the typical red top engine as you would normally get in a Honda Civic Type R. This particular engine is the K20 C1 series engine, which produces 329 horsepower, 420 newton meters of torque, and it's absolutely rapid to say the least. Now, one thing Hondas have always been great at is having naturally aspirated engines producing high revs and high power. So it does feel a little bit different to have a Honda engine with a turbo on it. Now, I know that's not completely new. There is other models that have done it. But the great thing about turbo in a Civic was always something that you could do aftermarket, and you could really tune them really high. So obviously, Honda have had to keep up with all other hot hatches to keep up with the horsepower numbers. And by doing that, they have had to implement a turbo. I definitely have to give Honda the nod for the turbo because they've not made it sound ridiculous. In fact, you actually can't even hear the turbo. You just know it's there because it has a boost gauge inside the car. You don't get any of the chavvy sounds when you change gear, like the or the it just doesn't need it. That's not what Hondas are about, in my opinion. And it is a very subtle turbo which has a high amount of output in power. I should add, the top speed of this car is 171 miles per hour, but the 0 to 60 time is a little bit questionable. It's 5.4 seconds, which I think is on the slow side compared to other hot hatches, but you do have to remember this car is a manual, so you're never ever going to get through the gear changes as quick as you would with the dual clutch transmission. If you pass this car in the street, you'd think the owner has modified it himself. And I do have to credit Honda again. And I know I've said that a lot in this video. I'm crediting Honda a lot. But it is just a fantastic car. You have to thank them for paying attention to their owners and customers, because the majority of people that buy cars like this will put splitters on it, they'll put black wheels on it, they'll black all the accents out, they'll put side skirts on it, and then they might go and fit a huge wang. Now, maybe this is why the car is 50 grand, because you can buy it and you literally need to do nothing to it. But I do think it is lacking something, and that's spacers on the wheels. Now, I get the wheels are inside the car to stop mud flicking up and all that, and aerodynamics, you've got these tyre vents and that, but they are rather tucked, and I do think with just a little bit of a wider stance, you could completely change the look of this car. That is coming from somebody that can't keep his hands away from modifying cars, such as myself, but you do think it looks modified. However, it's very OEM, very standard, and it does look very Japanese. Now, as you get inside the car, you're greeted with a hell of a lot of suede. You can't miss these beautiful red bucket seats with the Type R logo embossed into the headrest. They really are comfortable, but if you are a little bit chunky like myself and you've got a thick coat on, you do feel like you need to take it off to sit and drive relaxed. The gear knob is brushed aluminium, it feels very nice, and the throw in the gears is very short and precise. That was a nice little rhyme there, wasn't it? This car comes with Apple CarPlay as standard, and wireless Apple CarPlay I should have. You've got a wireless charging pad down the bottom, 2 USB plugs here, which are actually USB 2s and not USB Cs. You've got a centre console that's finished in silver, and if I'm being absolutely honest, I do think that looks dated already. It would have been nice to see some carbon fibre inside here, because everything looks better with carbon fibre. You've got a lovely big wide touchscreen at the top, very sleek, very modern, and you've got this very fancy joystick design on the dashboard where the vent is continuous and the toggle moves the actual blowers behind it, and it looks very sleek. One thing I have found is there's quite a few crumbs and bits of dust stuck in there, so it can be a bit of a nightmare to clean. You've got lane departure warning, lane departure assist, cruise control, a stop start button to start the engine, and it starts up. You've got a digital dash ahead of you, and you have some beautiful shift lights that come on when you are ready to change gear at the top of the clock. So they'll go red all the way to yellow, and then it'll flash red when you're ready to change the gear. That's if you do get close to bouncing this car off the limiter. You get Apple CarPlay as standard. You've got satellite navigation built in if you don't want to use your Apple CarPlay. And it comes with this really cool thing called Honda Log R. Now, I'm assuming that's meant to be pronounced logger. And when you press on that, it actually scores your driving when you take it to a track. It'll put all points in, and it'll tell you where you're up to, so you can monitor your progress when taking the car on a track. You've also got a display that monitors all the temperatures of the car. So you've got water temperature, oil pressure, external air temperature, intake air temperature, which is currently at 23 degrees. So cold air is always best when the car is sucking the air in. You have boost pressure, which at idle is sat at -10, and it goes up to about 30 psi when you're on full chat. It's also got a G-force meter, and it'll keep a log of that. So when you go back to review it, you can see how much you've been throwing the car, and it creates like a little map around how many G's you've been pulling. You come out of that and go back to the main menu, Bluetooth audio, apps, phone, connectivity. all the usual jazz that you would expect to get. You've got lovely little knurled dials here that are plastic that do feel very quality. And everything does feel premium, but plastic. So it's like a premium plastic. They're not the scratchy ones that you would expect in cheaper cars. However, you would expect some form of carbon fibre in this vehicle. At night, this lights up red with a bit of ambient lighting, but again, it looks a bit like an afterthought with that fascia. It maybe would have been nice to see that stretch all the way across and around the dashboard. It genuinely feels like Honda has spent all the money on performance with this car, and when companies do that, you do have to sort of tone it back a bit on finishes. With that said, this car by no means feels cheap. It just would have been nice aesthetically to have some more carbon fibres and things like that. You've got a cubby here that's nice, covered in suede. Back seats have got a little bit of suede on them, but these bucket seats, the typical red Honda seats, are amazing. And you've also got a red carpet that goes all the way through to the rear with red seat belts, of course. Honestly, it's a lovely car. The sound system is fantastic. That's when you can hear it above the engine noise, which is a bit fake, by the way. But yeah, it is all in all a good quality car, and it does feel a lot smaller in here than the car looks outside, and you do feel like you're positioned to really chuck it into corners. It's very nice. So with that said, I think we'll head out onto the road. This car is a 6-speed manual gearbox, and sometimes in a performance car the clutch can be rather heavy. In this, it isn't. It's nice and light. The bite point is very direct. It pulls well through the gears, and the throw between the gears is really short and clunky. It's absolutely lovely to change gear, and it does give you that nice feedback to assert you that you've gone into gear. This car will do around 65 miles per hour in second gear, which is absolutely absurd. It sounds amazing, but what the gearbox has is this clever gated system where it won't allow you to change into the gear if you're going too fast. So you don't really have to worry too much about blowing the gearbox up. Touch wood. There is no wood in this car, there's just plenty of suede, and it feels and smells great. Now, in comfort mode, it's very nice to drive. It's still very stiff. But what I tend to do when driving this around town, I have it in the individual mode. I have everything set to R+, and I have the suspension set at comfort, just because it is very, very harsh. But when you do get going, it just sounds amazing. It picks up well. One thing you do find with this car though is it does tramline a little bit, especially when the camber of the road is a bit adverse. Now you'll find that because it's a very stiff car, there's not much flex in the wheels, and there is zero wallowing. When you turn a corner, you're not sloping to the sides. It just feels like it's on rails, like it will not go anywhere. And the brakes do also squeal a bit like race brakes, so it is basically a road legal track car. It also has rev match technology. Now you'll notice when I'm selecting gears, it sounds like the revs are picking up. I'm not actually doing that, it does it automatically, so you don't need to blip the throttle. And one thing that really helps out with, especially when you're downshifting, if you was to do it yourself and you didn't match the revs perfectly, you get the lagging feeling where the car feels like it's stalling forward before it goes into gear. But with this, it doesn't have any of that at all. On greasy road conditions, it actually wheel spins in third gear, this car, and it does struggle to put the power down, which, as controversial as it may sound, I think it's about time the Civic Type R became four-wheel drive. And I know that is such a bad thing to say, but years ago, Civic Type R owners wouldn't even dream of Honda releasing a turbo engine. There was always the naturally aspirated fanatics. But when you start to put 330 horsepower through the front wheels, yes, it's fun, it's good that it wheel spins, but it's going to cost you a fortune because it'll chew tyres for fun. The thing is with this Civic Type R, it feels lively, it feels alive, agile, and it really allows you to feel everything through the steering wheel, the pedals, the gearbox, the sounds. You're really in touch with how the car drives. With new hot hatches that are all dual clutch and have flappy paddle gearboxes, after half an hour they become a bit lifeless and boring, but every single corner you take in this car and the way you put your foot down, it is just so quick. It's so quick, and the noise, it just makes me laugh. Honestly, I can't tell you how amazing it is to drive a car that still has this much energy and just has the passion to be the pedigree of what it is, and it is a Civic Type R. Just honestly, you take it in the corners, you're accelerating through a corner, and it just sticks. Out wide, in, through the corner, halfway, pull and excel. It even slips. It even wheel spins on the way out. It's so aggressive. Oh, talk about driver's car. This is a driver's car. Oh, Honda, you have absolutely nailed it with this car. And the more and more I see this, the more and more I start to understand why it's 50 grand. Civic Type R's have always been fun, but they've never been this fun. This is just unreal, this car. The fact that it has rev match, there is no lag in gear change, there's no stall, no engine brake. It just pulls and pulls for fun. Oh, mate. Wow. I am impressed by this. I've not driven something this fun in ages. It's absolutely amazing. There's not really much more to say other than the fact you need to drive one to appreciate how fun this car is. Manual gearboxes, when they're engineered like this and they've got that amount of power up front and it just pulls itself out the corners, why on earth would anybody buy an auto? Oh, honestly, the adrenaline. The reality is, if you're buying a car like this, you're not buying it to sit in the back seat, you're buying it to drive. And if you've got to convince your missus that it's practical as well as being fun, you could easily fit a child in the back. You could fit passengers in the back. It is only 4 seats, I should add, but why on earth would you want anything more? This car is all about Sunday driving, getting it out on the track. And do you know what? I absolutely love it. I think this is the best Honda Civic Type R ever produced. In fact, it's the best one that I've ever driven. It's the most fun, the most agile, and it certainly is everything that a hot hatch should be. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you want to see what Jim's been up to recently, click up here. And if you want to watch some typical old style Men and Motors episodes, click down here. But for now, guys, I'll see you all very soon.